So that's me, and I am getting ready to do this road to guitar mastery. But before I can do that, I have to warm up.
Greetings and welcome to day 50 of Road to Guitar Mastery.
The ongoing show where I attempt to master the guitar by breaking it down into its most fundamental pieces. For the season's final episode, I wanted to make a review of the show thus far, encompassing my most valuable insights and worst blunders. At the end, I will be presenting my newest routine for Season 2, utilizing everything I have learned. Road to Guitar Mastery was birthed from trial and error. Because I am more or less making this up as I go, this is my tentative plan. After listening to a true master, I learned the importance of isolating fundamental aspects of playing for extended periods of time. With this spark of inspiration in mind, I set out on my journey. The first pothole I encountered, however, was a transitional one. See, I had spent the previous 14 years learning music from a classical approach, playing in wind bands, big bands, jazz bands, marching bands, and eventually military bands. There was always a plethora of new music, skills, and techniques to learn, so I never cultivated the proper mindset necessary to isolate a task long enough to master it. Episodes 1 through 6 highlight this old mentality quite eloquently. Insight number 1, keep it simple. My warm-up in the previously mentioned episodes included a lot of everything, which is in fact the easiest way to master nothing. It's important to stick to the one fundamental you truly want to master. For example, this show is currently based on mastering alternate picking, so after you select the skill you want to master, simply create a practice plan that highlights that skill. For my purposes, warming up and practicing are virtually one and the same. Insight number 2, keep experimenting. Throughout the course of this season, I tried a few approaches for improving various aspects of my playing. First, I will talk about a couple modifications I made to my picking hand that ultimately improved my comfort level. Early in the show, I sought to upgrade my picking technique to match various masters I looked up to. If I could go back, I would have spent more time on this rotation principle considering how helpful it has become. It's easy to practice too. Just play controlled eighth notes with a strict focus on your arm movement. The next modification came more recently when I found it quite helpful to place my middle finger under my thumb to offer some support for my upstrums. The important lesson here is to constantly try new things in this everlasting quest to improve. Some ideas will stick, and others will, The Endurance Olympics, for instance, was one of those, The idea was to practice looping an exercise to a 5-minute timer in hopes of increasing endurance. Though this did help a bit, the unfortunate truth was by pushing for a set timed goal, my picking form would dwindle as my muscles fatigued. In hindsight, I learned there is no point in practicing something if you aren't practicing it perfectly. Also, as I've learned with my newest injury, pushing through the pain is not exactly the wisest decision ever. This brings me to my next insight. Insight number 3, take breaks. Again, if you aren't practicing perfectly, then you aren't really practicing, so it's okay to rest up when your muscles fail. I foolishly thought I could push through like a robot until one morning I woke up barely able to move my arm. To increase speed, I'd recommend instead practicing sprints. Like sprinting though, we can't just push ourselves to the limits and keep pushing. That's a fantastic route to injury. That's why this idea of gradually inching into that high pressure place is ideal. And we only push until we know we are losing form and our muscles tense up. We don't want to stay in that place for too long, but we do want to go there every day. We go until we slowly feel more and more comfortable with the pressure until there isn't any. Insight number 4, keep a practice log. Keeping detailed records of our practice sessions is paramount. It's the only way we can track our progress and experimentation. We need to be extremely aware of our current limits so we can find our weakest links and know exactly where to direct our focus. So far in this show, everything I'm practicing can fit into the category of 3-note descending patterns. This category can then be broken down into 3 possible accent choices. An accent on the first note, the second note, or the third note. To decide which of these to practice, I would play all 3 patterns and find the weakest link, or which pattern was the most uncomfortable. The rest of the season presents various methods I experimented with to improve my theoretical knowledge of the fretboard. I developed a few Sudoku-esque puzzle games to help memorize these unique patterns. Here's my simple Excel game that does the same function as the worksheets. Fill in the boxes in as many different ways as you can, then hit the reset button when all the boxes have been filled. This way, you can get in as many reps as possible. My advice would be to stick to one of the 3 patterns until you know the scale degrees unconsciously, then move to the other 2 patterns. To help understand the arpeggio shapes over these fretboard patterns, I developed the mixed up Mozart. In this game, I take a random integer generator, I set the values between 1 and 7, and I have it compile 30 random numbers that all fall between this range. I then associate each number to a pre-designated arpeggio within this 9-note section of the fretboard. I still use these methods today and will continue adding on to them as Season 2 progresses. With all that in mind, here is my new routine. Season 2 routine! The Mastery Marathon will be changed out with the Ultimate Accent Worksheet, considering it utilizes all accent possibilities. I will perform this new Mastery Marathon in sprint fashion, keeping track of my highest speeds as usual. I will then pick my weakest line to focus on for the remainder of the day. I will also utilize only my weakest hand positions each week, as well as sticking to a single string. Hopefully, through these modifications, I can get an even more focused result. Thank you all so much for joining me on the last episode of Season 1 for Road to Guitar Mastery. You can follow me on MeWe, Instagram, or Patreon, linked down below if you'd like to further support the show. Welp, that's all, folks. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. You know, if you're into that sort of thing. Take care, everyone.
Greetings and welcome to Road to Guitar Mastery.